My name is Rivka Martin, and I'm 28. I work as a commercial electrician in Tampa. Steady hours, good money, and the kind of job that teaches you one simple rule. When something flickers, you don't ignore it. You fix the loose connection before it burns everything down. I just didn't realize how bad the wiring was in my relationship until it started sparking right in front of me. I'd been with my boyfriend Nolan, 26, for 3 years. We met at a friend's cookout. Humid Florida heat, cheap beer, smoke drifting off the grill. Nolan laughed at one of my dry jokes like it was the funniest thing he'd heard all summer. I remember thinking, oh, this one actually listens. 18 months later, we moved in together. 2-bedroom apartment, decent area, rent split evenly. I paid a bit more because I earned a bit more. Fair, adult, simple. We had routines, inside jokes, weekend rituals. Nolan stole fries off my plate and claimed they tasted better because they were forbidden. I pretended to be annoyed and ordered extra anyway. For a long time, we were solid. Then, about 6 months ago, something shifted. Nolan works in social media marketing for a startup that treats every after-hours drink like a team-building opportunity. At first, I didn't mind. I'm not the jealous type. Independence matters. But independence isn't the same thing as disappearing. It started with missed replies. I'd text, "Hey, are you coming home for dinner?" Nothing. We'd plan a Saturday together, and by Friday night, he'd casually mention he'd already committed to something else. When I asked what, it was always vague. Just work people. Just friends. Just a thing. Somehow just became the word that erased me. The night it finally clicked was a Tuesday. I got home around 6, exhausted, boots dusty, hair pulled into a knot that said I crawled through ceilings all day. Nolan had told me that morning he'd be home by 7. So I tried. I cooked chicken Alfredo, his favorite. Garlic bread. Candles. I even set the table like it meant something, like we still did. 7 came. 8. By 9, my phone felt heavier in my hand. Dinner's ready. You on your way? Nothing. Everything okay? Nothing. By 10:30, I ate alone, cleaned up in silence. My dog, Bruno, a 3-year-old lab mix, who had been mine long before Nolan, sat close, warm and steady, like he knew I needed grounding. Bruno used to sprint to the door when Nolan came home. Lately, he barely lifted his head. I should have paid attention to that. Nolan walked in just after midnight, laughing at something on his phone. Not apologetic, not rushed, just entertained. "Hey," he said, barely looking up. I stood there, dish towel still in my hand. "Where were you? I made dinner hours ago." He blinked like I was inconveniencing him. I was out. "Out where?" I asked. "I texted you 5 times. That's when he said it. "I don't need to tell you where I'm going," Nolan said flatly. "You're not my dad." I stared at him. 3 years. Shared bills, shared bed, shared life. And he was talking to me like I was an annoying authority figure instead of his partner. "You're right," I said calmly. "I'm not your dad." His shoulders relaxed, like he thought he'd won. "I'm your girlfriend," I continued, voice steady. "The one who waited 4 hours wondering if you were hurt somewhere." He rolled his eyes. "You're being dramatic. I was just hanging out." "Basic communication isn't house arrest," I said. "It's courtesy." "You're being controlling," he snapped. "My mom warned me about people like this." People like me. The ones who cook dinner. The ones who worry. The ones who care if the person they love makes it home alive. I didn't argue. I didn't plead. Something inside me went quiet, like a breaker flipping. "Okay," I said. "Good night." I went to bed while he stayed up scrolling, laughing softly at messages that clearly mattered more than I did. The weeks after that were worse because the pattern settled in. He came and went without explanation. Treated questions like accusations. Meanwhile, I kept paying more of the bills, doing most of the housework, and trying to maintain a relationship that felt more and more one-sided. My best friend Dave noticed when he came over to watch football. "Where's Nolan?" he asked, grabbing a drink. "No idea," I said. "He left this morning." Dave raised an eyebrow. "That's weird." Apparently asking is controlling. "Controlling?" Dave scoffed. "My wife texts me when she stops for gas. That's not controlling. That's being in a relationship." Bruno sat at my feet while Dave scratched his ears. "At least dogs don't play mind games," he muttered. Something clicked in my head. I was putting in effort, emotional, financial, domestic, while Nolan was acting like a single guy with a live-in roommate who occasionally got annoyed. And then came the night that broke the illusion completely. 2 weeks later, Friday night, I went to Dave's for our monthly poker game. I'd mentioned it all week. Nolan said it was fine and talked about having a quiet night at home. That afternoon I texted, "Poker tonight. Home by midnight, he replied, K. I got home at 11:30 and walked into chaos. Music shaking the walls. At least 30 people crammed into our apartment. Drinks everywhere, red liquid spilled across the carpet. And Bruno locked in our bedroom, barking in panic. I pushed through strangers and found Nolan in the kitchen, laughing too loudly, wearing a shirt I'd never seen. A woman stood close beside him, confident, polished, her hand resting casually on his lower back. "Nolan!" I shouted over the music. "What is this?" "Oh, hey," he said. "You're home early." "It's almost midnight," I said. "Why are there random people in our apartment?" The woman smirked. "Relax, it's just a party." "Who are you?" I asked. "This is Kayla," Nolan said, giggling. "She's from my office." Of course she was. "We need to talk," I said. "Now." He sighed like I was ruining something important. We stepped into the hallway. "You need to shut this down," I said. "Now." "Why?" he snapped. "This is my apartment too." "Because you didn't tell me," I said, "and you locked Bruno in the bedroom." He was being annoying. That's when something in me shut off completely. I nodded slowly. "You're right. This is your apartment." I walked back inside, unlocked the bedroom, clipped Bruno's leash on with steady hands, and left. No yelling, no scene. Just me, my dog, and the sudden clarity that I was done begging for basic respect. As we stepped into the night air, the music still pounding behind us, I realized something terrifying and freeing all at once. If Nolan wanted to live like he was single, I could stop trying to save a relationship he clearly wasn't protecting. I didn't go home that night. Bruno and I crashed on Dave's couch, the same one I'd sat on 100 times before during game nights and lazy Sundays. Dave didn't ask many questions. He took one look at my face, handed me a blanket, and nodded like he already understood. The quiet was the loudest part. No music vibrating the walls, no wondering when Nolan would stumble in. Just the low hum of the AC and Bruno curled against my legs, breathing slow and steady. "What are you going to do?" Dave asked eventually, staring at the dark TV screen. I surprised myself with the honesty of my answer. "Nothing." He turned to look at me. "Nothing?" "Yeah," I said. "He wants independence. I'm done trying to manage his adulthood for him." Dave was quiet for a moment, then nodded. "That might be the smartest thing you've said all night." The next morning, I went back to the apartment around 10. The aftermath looked exactly like the kind of chaos Nolan claimed not to notice. Cups everywhere, sticky floors, the smell of stale alcohol clinging to the air like regret. Nolan was passed out on the couch, still wearing that unfamiliar shirt, mouth slightly open, phone dead in his hand. I didn't wake him. I took Bruno for a long walk instead. Let him sniff every bush, every tree, every corner of the complex like he was reclaiming territory. When we got back, I grabbed my work clothes and left again. That was the day I started what I privately called the independence plan. Nolan wanted to live like he was single, so I treated him like a roommate. Nothing more, nothing less. I stopped cooking for two. I made my meals, ate them, cleaned my dishes. If he didn't come home for dinner, that was his problem, not a personal failure on my part. I stopped asking where he was going, stopped wondering when he'd be back. If he walked out the door, I'd say, "See you later," without looking up. I stopped initiating plans. If Nolan wanted time together, he could ask, the way adults do. Most importantly, I stopped rearranging my life to fit his unpredictability. The gym became my second home. After work, I'd go straight there. 2 hours of lifting, sweat, and music loud enough to drown out overthinking. I showered at the gym and came home whenever I felt like it. I picked up extra side work, small electrical jobs for friends, neighbors, friends of friends. Good money, better distraction. Poker nights with Dave turned weekly instead of monthly. Trivia nights, weekend fishing trips. I said yes to things without checking anyone else's schedule. Bruno came with me everywhere he could. More walks, more car rides, more attention from people who were actually happy to see him. His tail wagged again, the way it used to. For the first week, Nolan barely noticed. He was still deep in his independent phase, coming and going, treating the apartment like a hotel where someone else restocked the essentials. Then, slowly, the balance shifted. Tuesday evening, I was heading out with Bruno when Nolan walked in. "Where are you going?" he asked, frowning. "Out." "Out where?" I paused, leash in hand, and met his eyes. "Just hanging with friends." "When will you be back?" I almost laughed at the irony. "I don't need to tell you where I'm going," I said evenly. "You're not my mom." His mouth actually fell open. "That's not funny," he said. "I'm not joking," I replied, and closed the door behind me. I didn't come home until almost midnight. He was waiting on the couch when I walked in. "Where were you?" he demanded. Out, I said, slipping off my shoes. Time flies when you're having fun. Night. And I went to bed. After that, he started noticing everything. The fridge, for one. I stopped buying his overpriced organic snacks and almond milk that tasted like disappointment. I bought regular milk. Real cheese. Cereal I actually liked. The kind he'd called too sugary. Thursday morning, I heard him sigh dramatically from the kitchen. Where's my almond milk? Didn't buy it, I called back. Why not? Wasn't on my list. But you know I use it every morning. I walked into the kitchen, grabbed my coffee. Do I? Because you know I make dinner most nights, and you stopped coming home for it. Funny how memory works. He didn't have an answer. The living room was next. For months, it had quietly become his space, his aesthetic, his preferences. My gaming setup had been packed away because it clashed. One evening, he came home to find it back where it belonged. What are you doing? He asked, staring at the TV and console. Making myself at home, I said. This is my apartment too, remember? But we agreed on the layout. You decided, I corrected. I went along with it because I thought that's what compromise looked like. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. There was no argument he could make without contradicting himself. Friday night, he came home early with takeout. I got Thai food, he announced. Your favorite. That's nice, I said, grabbing Bruno's leash. I already ate, heading out. Out again? His tone was sharper now. Poker night at Dave's. You were just there last week. Yeah, I said, we play every Friday now. Didn't I mention it? I hadn't, on purpose. But I got food for both of us, he said, irritation creeping in. Maybe text me next time, I said lightly. You know, communication. His jaw tightened. As I closed the door, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Light. At poker night, the guys noticed the shift immediately. Nolan finally realizing you have a life? Dave asked, dealing the cards. Oh, he's noticing, I said. My sister did this to her ex, Mike chimed in. Treated him like furniture, then panicked when he stopped waiting around. Didn't end well. You think you two will make it? Chris asked. I looked down at my cards. Pair of sevens. Nothing special. I don't know, I said honestly, but I know I'm not going back to how it was. The more I focused on my own life, the clearer things became. I'd been shrinking myself, lowering my expectations, calling loneliness being understanding. Not anymore. Sunday mornings, Bruno and I started going to a dog park nearby. It was there I met Andrew. Easy smile, golden retriever that Bruno instantly adored. We talked about dogs, work, nothing heavy, no checking phones, no mind games. One Sunday, Andrew suggested grabbing coffee nearby. Sure, I said. It was calm, comfortable, the kind of conversation where both people were actually present. I got home around noon to find Nolan pacing. Where have you been? He demanded. Dog park, I said. Grabbed coffee. With who? Andrew. His dog and Bruno get along. You went for coffee with another guy? His voice spiked. Yeah, I said calmly. It was nice. You can't just do that. I shrugged. You have Kayla. That's different. How? He couldn't answer. As I headed to the bedroom to change for my next plan, shooting range with Dave, I realized something important. Nolan wasn't upset because he missed me. He was upset because he was losing control of my attention. And that told me everything I needed to know. By the time Nolan realized this wasn't a phase, I'd already stopped waiting for him to catch up. That was the thing about pulling your energy back. You don't announce it. You don't threaten. You just stop. And the silence it leaves behind is louder than any argument. Wednesday evening, I came home from work to find Nolan in the kitchen, cooking. Not scrolling, not half listening to a podcast, actually cooking. I made dinner, he said, a little too carefully. Chicken Alfredo. The irony was almost funny. That's nice, I said, setting my keys down. I already ate, grabbed food with some people from work. His shoulders tensed. You didn't tell me you had plans. I didn't know I needed to, I replied. Do you want me to start asking permission now? That's not what I meant, he snapped, then stopped when he realized how it sounded. Then what did you mean? I asked. He opened his mouth, closed it. I grabbed Bruno's leash. I'm taking him for a walk. When we got back an hour later, the food was still sitting untouched on the stove. Nolan's bedroom door was closed. Thursday, he tried a different tactic. Affection. Texts during the day. Inside jokes. A heart emoji that felt like it had been dug out of storage. Movie night tonight? Just us? Can't, I replied, helping Dave install outlets. Can't that wait? Already committed. Friday, he escalated. Let's do date night, he said when I got home. That Italian place you like. Poker night, I said. Cancel it. I looked at him then, really looked. The irritation, the impatience, the expectation that I'd rearrange myself on command. Why would I cancel plans I already made? Because I'm asking you to, he said, like that should have been enough. It wasn't. That night, I packed for a weekend fishing trip with Dave and a few others. We'd planned it weeks ago. You're going away? Nolan asked, hovering in the doorway. Yep, be back Sunday afternoon. But we were supposed to talk. We did talk, I said. And now I'm going fishing. Saturday morning, I loaded the truck at dawn. Nolan stood in the doorway in sweatpants, eyes red. Please don't go, he said quietly. For a second, the old me flickered, the one who would have stayed. Fixed. Smoothed things over. But that version of me had eaten too many dinners alone. Plans were made, I said gently. I'll see you Sunday. Bruno jumped into the truck, tail wagging like he knew this trip mattered. The drive was 2 hours of open windows and loud music. No overthinking, no checking my phone. Just road, sky, and the steady sense that I was doing the right thing. The spot near Crystal River was perfect. Quiet water, barely anyone around. We fished, we joked. Bruno lived his best dog life. At one point, Mike looked over and said, "She giving you grief?" "Trying to," I said. "I'm not engaging." "Good," he replied. My ex did the same thing. Wanted freedom, but also wanted me waiting. When I stopped waiting, she panicked. "What happened?" Dave asked. "Divorced her," Mike said. "Best decision I ever made." We packed up late afternoon, sunburned and content. I didn't check my phone until Sunday. 17 missed calls. 30 plus texts. They started casual and spiraled fast. "How's fishing? Where are you? Why aren't you answering? You're being ridiculous." I didn't respond. When I got home around 3, Nolan's car wasn't there. Fine. I unpacked, cleaned my gear, took Bruno for a walk. Mrs. Patterson from down the hall stopped me. "That boyfriend of yours had quite the party a few weeks ago," she said, feeding Bruno a treat. "You weren't here." "No," I said, "I wasn't." Around 5, my phone buzzed. "I'm at my mom's. Can you come get me?" Something in his tone felt different. "What's wrong?" I texted. "Please, just come." I drove over. Nolan got in without a word. He looked wrecked. Red eyes, no confidence, none of the smug independence left. "I went to brunch with Kayla and some people from work," he said finally. "They were loud, making plans, talking about another party." I stayed quiet. "And I hated it," he continued. "All of it." He swallowed. "Kayla's been texting nonstop, flirty, pushy, and today I realized something." "What?" I asked. "She's an idiot," he said flatly, "and I was treating her attention like it mattered more than you." I parked in our lot, but didn't turn off the engine. "What do you want me to say, Nolan?" I asked calmly. "I don't know," he admitted. "Something. Anything." "You asked me what I wanted," I said. "I want a partner, not someone who keeps me as a safety net while acting single." "I got scared," he said. "Things were getting serious. I thought if I proved I didn't need you, I wouldn't get hurt." "And instead?" I asked. "I pushed away the one person who actually cared," he said quietly. It was the first honest thing he'd said in months. I looked at him, really looked. "I can't go back," I said, "not to how it was." "I know," he whispered, "but I don't want to lose you." "I'm not asking for promises," I said. "I'm asking for consistency." He nodded. "Kayla's blocked, completely." "Good," I said, "because this only works if you actually show up." We went inside together. Bruno greeted us like we'd been gone for weeks. That night we talked, really talked. Not fixing everything, just laying it bare. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't chasing him to stay. I was deciding whether I'd let him try. The next morning didn't come with fireworks. No dramatic apologies, no sweeping declarations about forever. Just coffee and mismatched mugs. Bruno stretched out between us on the kitchen floor, tail thumping lazily every time one of us moved. It felt fragile, like something newly rebuilt that could still collapse if handled carelessly. That was the first thing I made clear. "This doesn't reset everything," I told Nolan, leaning against the counter. "I'm not flipping a switch and trusting you again." He nodded immediately. No defensiveness, no sigh. "I know, I don't expect that." "Good," I said, "because I'm not going back to chasing you, ever." "I wouldn't ask you to." We started with boundaries. Basic ones. The kind that somehow become radical when someone decides communication is optional. If he was going to be late, he'd say so. If work had an event, we'd talk about it, not after the fact. No surprise parties. No strangers in our home without agreement. And Bruno never, ever locked away again. He agreed to all of it without arguing. Kayla was gone. Blocked. Removed. He showed me without me asking. "I don't want attention that costs me this," he said quietly. Rebuilding didn't happen in a montage. It happened in small, boring moments. Nolan coming home when he said he would. Texting if he was delayed, even by 20 minutes. Asking about my day and actually listening to the answer. I didn't give up my life to make room for him again. Poker nights stayed, gym stayed, side work stayed, fishing trips stayed. The difference was that now, when something overlapped, we talked about it, like two people who respected each other's time. A week later, he skipped a work happy hour to come home and cook with me. Not to impress me, just because he wanted to be there. Another week after that, he apologized to Dave, awkwardly, sincerely, for the party. Even brought cookies as a peace offering, which Dave found both unnecessary and impressive. "I'm trying," Nolan said later that night, uncertain. "I see that," I replied, and I meant it. The moment that stuck with me most came one quiet Sunday. Andrew and his golden retriever ran into us at the dog park. Nolan was with me this time. No tension, no posturing. We talked about dogs, work, nothing heavy. "You two seem good together," Andrew said casually as we were leaving. Nolan glanced at me, almost surprised. "We're getting there," I said. That night, lying in bed with Bruno snoring at our feet, Nolan turned toward me. "Thank you," he said softly. "For what?" "For not walking away completely." "I almost did," I said honestly. "I know." 3 months later, things weren't perfect, but they were solid. We communicated, we respected schedules, we addressed problems before they rotted. And maybe the biggest change was this. I no longer felt small for wanting basic courtesy. I learned that independence doesn't mean absence. Boundaries aren't punishment, and love doesn't require you to disappear to keep someone comfortable. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do isn't leaving.